Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Usha, who's an intermediate photographer from Wisconsin. Usha shot this with a Canon 5D and a 50mm f1.4 lens. Usha stopped down to f5.6 and exposed the file for 1/125th of a second. And we know a little bit about Usha's lighting setup here in her comments in her submission form. Usha says she's just getting into lighting. She set up a small home studio, and the main or key light on the portrait subjects here is a combination of window light and a Canon speed light on a remote cord flashing into a gold reflector, which is then bouncing onto the portrait subjects, and we'll talk more about lighting in just a second. First thing that I want to talk about for a little bit in today's critique is the idea of gesture and expression. To me, what makes this such a great portrait is the combination of energies that are being suggested with the different gestures and expressions on the two portrait subjects. On the adult, there's just a wonderful feeling of a genuine open smile. You can fake the smile with your mouth, but not with your eyes. There are things that happen with the small muscles around our eyes that key us into somebody genuinely smiling. One eyebrow might be a little bit higher than the other. We call that kind of smile having a twinkle in the eyes, and you really see that here. You combine that with a tilt of the head, which is a subtle bit of body language that is very powerful. It suggests an openness and being relaxed. This has just such a palpable feeling of a genuine openness and happiness. When you look at the little girl, the smile itself is very genuine. Again, you see the smile in the mouth and in the eyes, but the head is straight up and down, which is a bit of body language that suggests being a little bit more guarded. And when you combine that with a very obvious and powerful gesture of looking down, you get a really beautiful combination of open, happy, here happy, but sort of this childlike shyness or being timid. And it really takes this from what could be something that's more ordinary, where everybody's looking at the camera, it's just sort of smile and cheese. It adds another element of story. Juxtaposition is a real powerful conceptual idea in any kind of a storytelling form. And I just love that. You might think, well, so what? Why talk about it? You're describing something that's happened after the fact. Look, if we're doing formal portraits, these are kinds of things that we can manage in the story. We could ask somebody to look down. We can ask people to do these things. So I want to talk about that for a minute. If you're just getting into photographing people, I'd really encourage you to do a couple of things, or think about a couple of things. One, if you're going to photograph more than one person, come armed with knowledge. Have a lot of different ideas about how to pose people. One way to get people to relax in front of the camera is for them to have the real strong feeling that you know what you're doing. You don't ever have that awkward moment again where the portrait subjects say, what do you want us to do? And you say, I don't know, what do you want to do? And all of a sudden you're not in charge anymore and they're not as relaxed. And Usha's done a really beautiful job of posing here. A real basic thing is having two people that you want to suggest a closeness with these two people, to have them actually physically touching. Very powerful. If there's any negative space here at all, it can put people in a photograph in almost different universes. So I love what's happening here, and you'll have to get most people to do this. It's not a natural thing for them to get this close. Even let's say if they're a romantic couple, a lot of times you're going to have to manage that. And also managing the arm coming around here, the hand pointing towards the other hand suggests a closeness here that's very powerful. Something else is that to get people to have an energy in front of the camera, then you're going to have to be that way yourself. And so many people are nervous in front of the camera. And so another thing I'd encourage you to do is to be as prepared as you can for the portrait shoot, and then to slow down. That's a real powerful way to get people to relax. Slow your voice down. I know that's funny to hear me say as I rush through these critiques trying to pack as much information as I can into 10 minutes, but if you were sitting for me and I noticed that you were nervous, I would slow my voice down. I would lower the timbre of my voice. I would try and keep my hands below the waist and not have a lot of high energy body language with my hands until I saw you starting to relax. And then another thing that you can do is have music playing, and ask people before they get there what kind of music they like. Another thing from a setting standpoint that can help people first to just be calm. Let's talk about lighting. From a lighting standpoint, this open lighting, given the subject matter, I think works pretty well, kind of an even lighting. One of the things I love about the lighting is Usha's getting great light into the eyes. When it comes to perfect world improvement for the lighting, one basic thing I might change here a little bit is get the key light the flash bouncing into the gold reflector up a little bit higher. And a classic rule is the middle of your light is slightly above eye level of the portrait subjects. That way, instead of having up shadows, which is a little bit unnatural because the sun would never do this and was really in some respects trying to mimic the light of the sun in form of portraiture, you would have loop shadows that are down shadows. They're drop shadows. That might get the light out of the little girl's eyes, so then it may be something that I do here in Photoshop where I sort of get rid of the feeling of these shadows, and there are not many of them on the faces that are going up. I might try and sort of take those away, but something to think about. The other things that I'm going to mention here are a little bit more advanced. A background light to create sort of a halo effect, particularly with these women having dark hair on a dark background. Having a background light that creates a halo effect would create some separation and dimensionality, and this is way more complicated, more advanced. Requires more lights, more complicated lighting pattern. But having some kicker or accent lights back here to create specular effects on the top of the head to create a feeling of dimension. The problem with those kinds of lights is that the more complicated your lighting pattern gets, if your portrait subjects move at all, it changes the lighting pattern. All of a sudden an accent light is now a key light, a second key light that's creating a big specular highlight and a shadow going against your front key light. A little trick that you can do if you're working digitally is you could have a couple of kicker lights back here and shoot a few shots with your portrait subjects not doing much of anything, and get those frames and then turn the kicker lights off and then layer those kicker light effects in on the hair. You might think, well, why don't I just do all of that in Photoshop? Very, very difficult to take black hair all the way up to the point of having a specular highlight there without creating noise. So just a trick with kicker lights that you might think about, but something that's a lot more advanced. Sorry about that. I've moved to the wrong slide here, so let's bring our slide back. When it comes to perfect world improvement, besides the lighting things that I've mentioned, the other thing that I might do here is change the color of the background to more of a color that harmonizes with the clothes that the adult is wearing here. This is going back to a critique I did last week where the idea is for things that are background ideas to be tied together to help the portrait subject come forward. Right now there's quite a bit of warmth, almost yellow in the background, and there's quite a bit of warmth in the black of the hair. If this pushes more towards these colors, then that warm in the hair and the warm in the skin and a feeling of a good bit of yellow there can complement more of a purple blue that's happening all the way around and make the portrait subjects come forward. So here's a variation. I've kind of pushed it over the top to really make my point. I've created that halo effect in a rough way, I'll say, around the portrait subjects. Not much of a way to create an accent effect here, but I did create that background halo effect, and I did take that color and push it towards sort of this idea of violet blue so that there's more separation, and I open up the lighting on the portrait subjects. And then I also could see making the case here for a crop where we just come in closer and really accentuate the most powerful part of this, getting rid of some of the negative space. And here's that variation. One other thing I'll say here at the end is that a lot of times when you're learning about photographing people, you'll hear to watch out for jewelry, and jewelry can become very high contrast and overwhelming. This is a great example where jewelry is actually adding a beautiful layer of information to the image, mainly because of what this person is wearing. This feeling of sort of the gold in the print is helping to balance out and harmonize with the jewelry. And the other thing that's nice here about the jewelry is that mostly it's a series of repeating circles, and from a design standpoint there's a rhythm and a harmony there. So instead of this becoming overwhelming, it actually becomes a rhythmic part of the portrait. But you really have to watch jewelry if what you're trying to talk about is actually the sparkling energy of gesture and expression on the face. Really beautiful portrait here from Usha. Just an incredible moment in terms of gesture and expression, and considering Usha's just starting out with lighting, I think a really good job of managing the lighting. I want to thank Usha for submitting this beautiful portrait to the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.